On a whim, I decided to try Deliver Us Mars when it came out. The night before, though, I realized that this is actually a sequel to a game called Deliver Us the Moon. However, according to the developer, Deliver Us Mars is a standalone game, taking place 10 years after the first one. There are some characters that were in the first game that will show up in the sequel, but I finished Deliver Us Mars with no knowledge of the first game's story, and it didn't feel like I was missing anything. So, sit back, relax, and let me tell you about it. Make sure you stick around to the end for the final rating of Deliver Us Mars.
Hello, Earth to Kathy.
Follow Kathy Johansson, a gifted young woman with an interesting upbringing set in the future, around the 2050s, 2060s. Her father, being one of the smartest men on the planet, currently working on a project to save a dying Earth, seemingly betrays all mankind with a single selfish act, leaving Kathy alone with her older sister. Years later, Kathy, who is now working for the same company her father did, receives a cryptic message from Mars. Soon after, she joins a crew setting out for Mars to uncover the mysteries her father left behind and hopefully save Earth and humanity in the process. There wasn't anything I would say was inappropriate for the kids. Curse words and violence were kept to a minimum. There were some scenes that could get pretty heavy with the family drama, but I wouldn't say the kids need be scarce while this game is on.
Insane training you're putting her through. Don't you hear alarm bells ringing,
The
Dad?
moon is perfect, Lisa.
How?
Right, first things first, what can you see? Is there any damage to the thruster?
It's hard to say whether this is a video game or an interactive movie. Deliver Us Mars is a story-rich game, with small bits of gameplay moving from one cutscene to the next. There are no choices that affect the outcome of the game, so it's very straightforward. I would say about 50% of the time I was playing a game, the rest of the time I was watching a movie.
Functional. Is the thruster still receiving power?
There were a few times where the gameplay felt very tedious. Some parts were kind of cool from the perspective they were being presented from, but the excitement shortly wore off with the slow pace of the game. Setting up to launch, for instance. I enjoyed flipping switches, getting everything ready, but it seemed to go on forever. A little too immersive, perhaps. Same thing with the climbing mechanic. With each arm being controlled by their own button, Kathy seemed to move very slow and robotic. It was bad enough that I would try some daring actions that usually ended poorly, honestly wasting more time in the long run. I had a hard time deciding whether to play the game with a controller or not. It jumps between first and third person depending on the environment I was going through. I ultimately decided on mouse and keyboard, and it worked out. There was only one part that may have been intuitively easier with a controller. I had to jump backwards off of a wall onto another wall, and couldn't really process how to manage that with a keyboard.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Every chapter had a couple of puzzles needing to be solved in order to move forward. As the game progressed, the puzzles did start to get a little more complex. Some of them I kind of felt like I accidentally fell into the solution, while some I really did have to think about. Overall, the puzzles weren't too difficult to keep me trapped for an extended period of time. I moved through the game at a steady pace. But it's not all cinematics and puzzles, oh no. This game offers a decent variety of collectibles hidden in every chapter. Some being little vanity items like comic books, others being notes left behind, slowly building the story underneath everything. I didn't do a very good job collecting everything. I explored a little, but I wasn't terribly compelled to check every nook and cranny. One minor detail I didn't really like was the character design. I realized this isn't a AAA title or anything, but when everybody's next to each other and about the same height, they all looked like young teenagers. It wasn't made clear, but I think there was a decent age difference between everybody. but there wasn't enough detail in the face to tell. And some of them looked a little disproportionate, like too big of a head for a tiny neck. The soundtrack was really good though. I liked a lot of the music and it fit in very well where it was put. And that's the gist of the game. I don't really want to disclose much more for fear of spoilers. If you've enjoyed my review thus far, hit that like and sub for more. And if you feel like I've missed something, or completely disagree with my assessment, let me know. Tell me all about it in the comments below. Okay, let's throw this game on a shelf. Well, first I have to close my curtains, start up the drum roll, stare intensely into the camera, and ta-da! Bottom shelf. Not a bad game. I feel like I got my money's worth. I just wouldn't say it captured me as much as it may have wanted to. Some of the scenes could have been more powerfully delivered. It just didn't quite hit the mark. And that is all I had to say about Deliver Us Mars. Now it's time for me to move on to the next one. I will see you there. Bye!